Hello everyone, and welcome to the Tome of Silver, the show where I randomly select a game from my collection, review it, and add it to an ever-growing ranking list. Dengeki Bunko is a publishing company in Japan, best known for publishing various series of light novels such as Sword Art Online, Toradora, Spice and Wolf, and many others. 2014 would mark Dengeki Bunko's 20th anniversary, and to celebrate, the company decided to team up with French Bread, the developers best known for 2D fighting games such as Melty Blood and Under Night in Birth, to create their very own crossover fighting game featuring the characters from their various light novel series. And so, Dengeki Bunko Fighting Climax was created, originally only released in Japanese arcades in March of 2014. The game was eventually ported to the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita in November of 2014, and surprisingly, was released here in the West the following year. Honestly, when I first saw the roster for Dengeki Bunko, my first thought was, who? But after watching a couple YouTubers I enjoy play it, I actually thought it looked rather fun, and decided to pick it up for myself. Is the game a proper celebration of Dengeki Bunko? And is it a good fighting game in its own right? Choose your envoy of hope, and let's turn the page to Dengeki Bunko Fighting Climax.
Fighting Climax!
Dengeki Bunko Fighting Climax is a 2D fighting game, featuring 12 playable characters with 18 assist characters spanning over 22 different series of light novels. Of the playable cast, we have Yukina Himuragi from Strike the Blood, Taiga Asaka from Toradora, both Kirito and Asuna from Sword Art Online, Shizuo from Durarara, Kirino Kosaka from Oremo, Shana from Shakugan no Shana, Makoto Misaka from A Certain Magical Index, Kuro Yukihime from A Cell World, Tomoka Minato from Rokyobo, Miyuki Shiba from A Regular at Magic High School, and finally, Rentaro Satomi from Black Bullet. As the game was published by Sega, the game also features 2 Sega guest characters, which can be unlocked by playing through the arcade mode. Beating the arcade mode normally will unlock Akira, the mascot character of Sega's Virtua Fighter series, and the only character in this entire roster with any visible muscle mass. However, if you complete arcade mode by finishing most fights with a super attack, then you will instead unlock Selvaria from Valkyria Chronicles. The way the game works is that you select one playable character and one support. Each character has a light, medium, and hard attack that you can use to string together combos. Supports can be summoned by pressing X. Each support has 2 attacks, which can be changed by pressing X on its own or pressing X while holding either left or right. Each character has meter which builds up while they attack or are attacked. Players can use 1 meter to perform a slightly stronger version of their special moves, or they can use 2 meters to perform a climax attack, which can do a large portion of damage if it connects. Each character also has a unique impact skill, which they can use twice per fight. Sometimes it changes up how the character fights, such as with Kirito's impact skill allowing him to dual wield, which increases the amount of hits he lands while adding additional attacks to his moveset for the duration of the skill. Other times it can be simply a very strong attack, such as Kirino's Slap and Selvaria's Gunfire. Finally, we have the burst mechanic. During the fight, each character will constantly have their burst gauge charge up. Once it reaches 100%, the player can use a burst, which comes in one of 3 flavors. If the player uses it while standing still, they will instantly gain a large portion of their meter back. If the player uses burst while attacking the opponent, then the opponent will be launched up into the air, allowing the user to continue their combo. Finally, if burst is used while a character is being attacked, the burst will knock the attacker away, breaking the user out of a combo. Since a few characters of the roster are for the most part normal people like Taiga or Kirino, the game gets pretty creative with a few of the movesets. A lot of Kirino's attacks have her quick changing into different costumes, giving her a larger variety of attacks than one would expect for an average high schooler. Perhaps my favorite was Tomoka. Tomoka is from a basketball-focused series, and as such, Tomoka's moves have her transforming her opponent into a basketball, which she then makes passes to her teammates and performs dunks. What a fun and memorable moveset. It really helps her stand apart, and was very creative on the developer's part. In terms of gameplay, Fighting Climax takes up an interesting space for crossover fighting games. Mechanically, the game is no Smash Bros. Or Ultimate Ninja Storm. Fighting Climax is a proper 2D fighter. perform specials and the like, you'll need to be able to enter the proper inputs in order to use them, which makes this game probably a bit more technical than fans of Dengeki Bunko were hoping for. On the other hand, the game is nowhere near as technical as, say, Street Fighter or Marvel vs. Capcom. Most of the inputs are fairly simple to enter once you get the hang of them, and with just a little bit of experimentation, I was able to perform a large number of pretty decent and stylish combos. So Fighting Climax is a bit more technical for those just wanting to play as their favorite light novel character, but a bit too simple for hardcore fighting game fans, leaving in this kind of awkward middle ground. Still, for what it's worth, I very much enjoyed what I played. I'm someone who's always wanted to learn how to get good at a bunch of fighting games, but never really had the time to commit to sitting down and learning all the ins and outs. So being able to perform proper combos without too much need for long sessions in training mode, and without it feeling like the game was holding my hand the entire time, felt great, and that feeling in turn made me want to experiment and play around with the rest of the roster much more than I normally would in other fighting games. While the middle ground Fighting Climax sits in makes it awkward for either the casual or the hardcore, it just so happens to feel just right for me, and as such I had a great time playing Fighting Climax, and I regularly come back to play it every now and again. It was actually surprising how much I got into this game. I knew Kirito and Asuna because of how popular Sword Art Online is, but honestly the only series I was properly familiar with at the time was Black Bullet, as I had watched the anime to completion, but really I didn't even think it was that particularly good. So the fact that I was able to get into and have so much fun with Fighting Climax was a welcome surprise. And the game even got me to watch Toradora, which I ended up rather enjoying. In terms of game modes, Fighting Climax has a very healthy amount. The game has a story mode, which is divided into Arcade and Dream Match. In Arcade you select a character and fight through 9 fights. There is a story of sorts that's there, but it's kinda nothing. Basically, an evil being called Zetsumu is devouring worlds and is capable of shapeshifting into the beings he consumes, and whichever character you chose has been summoned to defeat him. There's a brief dialogue about the importance of dreams and never giving up on them, but the story is so short that it feels rather unremarkable. The thing that's disappointing is that there isn't any interactions between the cast that's crossing over here. Yes, you fight the other cast, but they're all just the bad guy, Zetsumu, shapeshifting, so his dialogue is mostly the same. However, Dengeki Bunko rectifies this by also including Dream Match, where each character has 5 fights that you can select, which treats the player to a short interaction between the 2 combatants. Even not being very familiar with most of the cast, these interactions were fun, and a couple even got some laughs out of me. So I gotta say, not a bad offering for story mode. If you want a brief story of your character saving the world, play Arcade mode, and if you want to see interactions between the cast, you play Dream Match. In these game modes, I really liked all the character portraits and the way they're animated. The 2D images which have been animated to move. It's nice, and it gives a bit of life to the portraits that you don't normally get when a game decides to use static portraits to portray their characters. Another neat detail is each character's portrait has been drawn by the original light novel artist. This leads to some wildly differing art styles between each character, and it can be funny seeing a more simply shaded character like Kirino standing next to a much more stylized Rentaro. Normally I don't like when a game doesn't have a consistent art style, as it can lead to interactions between certain characters seem off-putting, as is the case with games like PlayStation All-Stars or Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. In the case of Fighting Climax though, I actually really like the way this was done. The drawn portraits for each character makes them feel properly pulled from their respective series, while also paying tribute to the artist who originally brought these characters to life. Plus the characters share a proper art style during gameplay with the game's lovely sprite art, so it's a nice case of being given the best of both worlds. Going back to gameplay, the game offers much more than just story mode, as there's also standard versus mode, online matchmaking, a training mode to practice different moves and combos, and challenge mode, which comes in 3 varieties. There's score attack, where you fight 9 battles in a row, with the goal of getting as high of a score as you can by performing well in the fights. There's also time attack, which has you fighting 9 fights, but this time the goal is to clear these 9 fights in as fast of a time as you can, putting less of a focus on performing well and more on speed. Finally, there is survival, which has you fight as many opponents as you can get through on a single health bar, only healing a slight bit in between fights, so this mode certainly encourages more careful playing. All these together, and the player is actually provided with a pretty excellent selection of game modes. And since each one offers a new way of playing the game, it does help a lot to prevent the game from growing stale. This is great, especially since you'll want to play through these modes a few times to earn some of the game's unlockables, something Fighting Climax has in spades. As you fight in any of the game modes, you'll unlock CP. I assume CP stands for Climax Points, which is not a phrase I particularly like saying, but I digress. With CP, you can buy a variety of unlockables. These include things to customize your profile, like icons, plates, and even autographs by the artist, writers, and voice actors for the respective light novels. CP can also be used to buy a variety of alternate colors for characters, each character having 14 different color palettes. For as little as they are on screen, even the support characters get 14 alternate colors to choose from, so the supports are getting just as much love as the main fighters. Finally, after completing Dream Match with a character, you can buy illustrations of the character in the special menu, as well as be able to listen to various voice lines. My favorite part about these voice lines is that they even had the voice actors record thank you notes to the player, where they discuss what it was like returning to play as the character and their experiences with the game. These are really cute additions that I wish crossover games did more. I love these little behind the curtain things, they're great. Finally, the game also includes some cover art for each of the light novels represented. With all these extras to unlock, there's always a feeling like you're progressing towards something, even if it's something minor like an icon, that makes this game worth coming back to every now and again. There's so much here, and with all the inclusions here, I think Fighting Climax does a wonderful job at being a proper love letter to the fans of Dengeki Bunko properties. However, in a lot of ways, Dengeki Bunko is just as much a love letter to Sega fans as it is Dengeki Bunko fans. Alongside the two guest characters Akira and Silvaria, the game's loaded with nods to various Sega properties, the biggest of which is the stages. As I said, I'm not too familiar with most of the series in this game, so this is purely speculation on my part, but I guess since a lot of the Dengeki Bunko series take place in modern day Japan, it would be difficult to have a healthy amount of stages with proper visual variety. As such, none of the stages in this game are taken from any light novels, but instead are all based on various Sega games. We have a Sonic themed stage, a Nights into Dreams stage, a Shinobi stage. So many Sega properties are represented here, and they're all gorgeously made. I love every stage in this game. Each one stands apart so clearly from one another, and honestly, it makes me really want a Sega fighting game in this style. I know Dengeki Bunko fans who maybe aren't as familiar with Sega games may be disappointed that none of the stages are from the actual Dengeki Bunko series, but as a huge fan of Sega, and these stages admittedly being one of the biggest factors of me purchasing this game to begin with, I am so happy this is the case. The Sega love doesn't stop there either. In arcade mode, the character who summons your chosen fighter uses the design of Dreamcast from Sega Hard Girls. This is probably one of the weirdest references, as the character is called Denshin and has a different personality, it just uses the same design. Finally, several of the unlockable colors make reference to other Sega characters, like Zephyr from Resonance of Fate and Hatsune Miku. There's definitely points to be made about the game being a bit unfocused, as it was meant to celebrate Dengeki Bunko's 20th anniversary, not Sega. And while I can certainly see where they are coming from, what can I say, I love it. Dengeki Bunko Fighting Climax is a pretty darn good fighting game. It has a really strong offering of content both in terms of gameplay and the various unlockables it includes. The game's mechanics do take an awkward middle ground between casual and competitive, but with the right amount of experimentation, players can perform some stylish combos and perform at the game's higher level. Add the amount of love the game includes for Dengeki Bunko and Sega alike, and you have yourself a game that will fit well in either fan's collection. And so, I will be placing Dengeki Bunko Fighting Climax at the number 10 spot in the ranking. I definitely find myself wanting to come back and play it casually more than I do Sonic Mania, but my love for Fate Extra's story means it will beat out Dengeki Bunko in this case. I'm sure Fighting Climax would have been much higher if I was more intimately familiar with the various represented series in this game. However, keep in mind Dengeki Bunko has beaten out Ultimate Ninja Storm, a game of a series I very much love, and J-Star's Victory Versus, a crossover of some of the biggest shonen series. So honestly, I think that's a testament to how good of a game Fighting Climax is in its own right. Don't let the number 10 spot fool you. Dengeki Bunko Fighting Climax is a great time. Next time, we'll be taking a look at a classic platformer, one which turned 20 years old at the time of this recording. Well, I say classic, but it wasn't really so beloved when it first released, though time has been much kinder to it. What game am I referring to? Well, you'll just have to wait and see. In the meanwhile, thank you so much for watching. Take care, and may we see each other again when we turn to the next chapter in the Tome of Silver.